Poems. A wanderer said to a Sufi poet, "Your verses are recited everywhere, but your growing fame annoys as many people as it pleases. Can there be a purpose in this?" He said, "Beloved of the brethren, there may or may not be a purpose, but how instructive is an examination of the effect. The Sufi is like the tree which gives shade for relief and wood for use, and fruit for pleasure and nutrition. Now, if a man is annoyed by a tree, observers may be able to realize how stupid he is, and consequently be able to avoid him. The hostile critic thinks that the tree is a snake standing up to strike, for his enmity distorts his vision. People of sense will withdraw from the company of such an unfortunate one, and there will be at least some who say, 'Is that not a tree rather than a snake?' Such people will draw near to a tree which, even with their sensibility, they might have overlooked before. Have you not heard of the man who said, 'If this horrid man says that Zaid is to be opposed, I will draw closer to Zaid, for he must assuredly have qualities which I have not suspected.'" Discernment. A visitor, who was also a famous philosopher, said to Bahuddin Naqshband, "I have read widely and fully of the spiritual practices which can transform ordinary men into perfect ones." Bahuddin said, "You would have done better to read of the stages and the states in which the perfect men can come into being. But your desire for perfection may be like the ambition of the farmer who knew that flour came from wheat, but was too attached to the thought of flour to till the soil, and so he starved." The visitor said, "Did the farmer have nobody to reproach him with the shallowness of his thinking?" Bahuddin answered, "Indeed he did. A wise man came to him and said, 'You are not going deep enough into this matter.' And the farmer replied, 'You could have accused me of shallowness if I had wanted bread and only gone so far back as the flour. But see, I have gone beyond flour even as far as wheat.' That was the nature of their conversation. The visitor said, "In the house of one of your disciples I have met people whom you have sent out, and who are of the nature of saints, and their sanctity is resplendent, and I find none like this in your own house here." Bahuddin sighed and said, "In the house of the jeweller there are unpolished gems, and those who delight in the colour of gold in the shop may be incapable of discerning it in the mine." Camels and Bridges. One of the first people to be called Sufi was a man whom few people understood. One day a visitor went to this Sufi's chief disciple and said, "Why does the Sufi send away so many people? Most spiritual men regard it as an obligation to teach all who come. Why does he not endure the burden so that he might help others?" It is related that the chief disciple took the inquirer to a bridge where heavily laden camels were crossing. He said, "Now look and ask yourself the question again. Seeing this bridge and those camels, ask in the language of camels and bridges, why do the camels not carry a heavier burden? Why does the bridge not endure more?" Interchange. A dervish was approached by a total stranger who handed him a piece of cloth. Without hesitation, the dervish reached into a basket and gave the man a fish out of it. The many young men who surrounded the dervish to absorb his wisdom held heated discussions as to the symbolic or other meaning of these actions. Then, after many days, the dervish had them tell him what their several conclusions had been. Then he said, "The real substance of this interchange was to enable me to choose those of you who are sufficiently masters of understanding to see that this was a meaningless interchange. Mosquitoes. A dervish said to a Sufi, "You make yourself difficult to find, but this does not only select the best people, the people of feeling, to seek you, it encourages the idle, those who try to find you just because it is difficult." "Why should there be any harm in that?" asked the Sufi. "The people of true perception have, in any case, arrived at the door, and that is correct. The ridiculous ones must always have an object, and will seek anything difficult, whether it is me or not. But it is easy to send the ridiculous on their way, since their finding a Sufi physically may be possible for them, while finding him spiritually is impossible for them. We can fight wolves and admit to our company rational men, but a superabundance of witless mosquitoes could choke us, and nobody would benefit from that." How to become a thief. Once upon a time there was a man who was a religious bigot. He was small and had a rather crabbed face, and believed that everything which he was must be the result of divine influence alone. One day, when he was sitting thinking to himself how good he was, a tall and burly thief came up to him. The thief said, "I am a thief." At first the man was annoyed, then amazed, then reproachful, but the thief was there to play on the man's vanity. He started to say such things as, "You are too small to be a thief, but I could make you the fastest runner in the world." In short, the bigot became interested in the thief's promises, and his greed attached itself to a new ambition, to become a runner and jumper. Every day the thief visited the bigot, and every day there was more running and higher jumping. Finally, such were the praises lavished upon him, the bigot decided to accompany the thief on a burglary. They climbed the wall of the Sultan's palace. They outstripped the pursuing guard, climbed a tower and leapt onto the roof of the audience chamber, where a giant ruby hung suspended above the throne in total darkness. Just as they were reaching for the ruby, they were seized by guards, lamps were brought, and the hall was seen to be full of people. The king asked the thief what he was doing. "Your Majesty," said the thief, "I was caught, if you remember, some months ago, and I was released because I said that to be a thief was a matter of how people had played upon me in earlier days, and that even an upright cleric could be a thief. Your Majesty released me on condition that I made a thief out of an honest man, and brought him here. I asked the chamberlain to have this place in darkness for the purpose of this very demonstration." "This is indeed a wonder," said the king, "when a thief has been honest enough to keep his word, and a religious man has been dishonest enough to become a thief." A thousandth part. A pious but habit-ridden man one day visited one of the greatest Sufis of all time, anxious to see him before he died, greedy to obtain something from him for himself, unable to restrain his curiosity as to what his appearance might be, not capable of approaching him with calm and ease, ready to apprehend. He said to the Sufi, "Your Sufism intoxicates me. What I have read of your work amazes me. I had no idea that there was so much learning which had not yet been given out to mankind." The Sufi said, "If what you have experienced of Sufism has cast you into such a state as this, it is just as well that you have only seen 1,000th part of it." The pious man said, "How can this be?" "Well," said the Sufi, "Sufism is 1,000th of the total of knowledge. The rest may be known to the Sufi, but it is only the 1,000th particle which is seen or felt by such as you." The pious man said, "What words, what thoughts, what actions! I am again lost in wonder at the grandeur of such a concept." The Sufi said, All wisdom which is employed by spectators merely for the purpose of admiration is lost upon them. Beware of admiring the peach too much, in case you find you cannot taste it. That is what is meant by learn how to learn. The aim of the Nightingale. A nightingale who happened to have no home of his own decided that he would try to settle in a certain forest. The birds who were already there, however, had their own ideas about the matter, and soon drove him out. One day, sitting disconsolately by the dusty road nearby, he was spied by another nightingale, who stopped to ask why he looked so forlorn. "I tried," said the first bird, "to make my home among other birds, but they pecked and they mobbed me, and they flapped at me until I had to leave yonder forest." "Perhaps you were boastful," said the other nightingale. "When, in a similar situation, I sought a tree of my own, all the birds first collected and asked me what I was doing, why I was singing." "Yes, those birds did the same with me," said the first nightingale. "And what did you say?" "I said, I am singing because I simply cannot help it." "And then?" "And then they attacked me as I have described." "Ah," said the other bird, "that was your mistake. They thought that you had no self-control, that you might be mad, and that you might try to make them behave in a similar manner. When I was asked the same question, I said, I am trying to please you with my song. That was an aim which they could understand." Abstention. A devout pilgrim travelled for many days to visit Baba Chaki. When he arrived at his house, the pilgrim was most distressed to see that, although it was the fasting month, Chaki was sitting in the middle of the day eating large quantities of roast meat. Bitterly disappointed, the pilgrim nevertheless made his salutations and sat for 3 days with the Baba, hoping that some explanation might be offered. But there was none, and the pilgrim disconsolately started on his way home. He had not gone far when he saw the cell of a religious man beside the road, and he stopped to say prayers and pass some time with the anchorite. The religious man, after they had sat together for a space of time, said, "You are sad, and your distress is infecting the air, so that I am unable to maintain my peace. Can it be that you have been to see Chaki?" The pilgrim said, "Your perception of my state is undeniably an evidence of the holiness of your vigils. You have transformed my sorrow by that remark into delight, and in place of sadness I now have hope. But can you tell me what has happened to the great Chaki, that he should behave in such a manner?" The holy man said, "Nothing has happened to Chaki. I occupy myself with prayers and fastings. I sing devotional songs and carry out special practices. I am abstemious, and I follow the rules which have been laid down for those who would attain. This is what you, too, should be doing, and this is what Chaki recognized in you. This is what he said to you by his actions. If I were as great a man as Chaki, I would have no need of such things. If you were fit to become his disciple, you would not have been influenced by the appearance and insensitive to the reality. You and I are in the same dire situation. One day, one or other of us, or both, may reach the stage when we can become the disciples of Baba Chaki." An obscure scholar. An obscure scholar approached a Sufi master and asked him a stupid question. "Be off with you," said the Sufi. The scholar went away, loudly maintaining that the Sufi could not be civil if he tried, and was an ignorant braggart to boot. Another philosopher, interested by the Sufi's attitude but unsure of how to interpret it, asked the reason for his behavior. "Ah, friend," said the Sufi, "you will never interpret such conduct by the standards of rules which you seek to apply. You will be able to understand only by the standards of moments." At that moment I had a chance to do less damage to the wiseacre by shaking him off impatiently than I would have done, because of his character, by refutation, reasoned arguments, or any other customary alternative. "But what of your own repute? For instance, as a man of courtesy and restraint?" "The repute of the gardener comes with the appearance of flowers, not with the breaking of the ground, and the repute of the farmer from the crop, not from the threshing of seed." If they stopped their work to consider repute at every moment, would there be flowers? Would there be crops? The Sufi asked. Therefore the wise have said, "The silken dress gains admiration and is followed by no real product. Wear, therefore, wool, until this becomes the badge of pride with evil product." Confined Thinking. In a rest house on one of the great Central Asian highways of the Silk Route, a certain man was talking, loudly and incessantly, one evening. Everyone hoped that he would stop, so that travellers could get some rest before the following morning's early start. But this man showed no sign of quietening down, and few of those present were pleased when a wandering dervish approached the garrulous one, greeted him politely, and said, "I wish to listen to every single word of yours with the greatest possible attention. Please continue to talk." The talker continued with greater volume and verbosity, phrasing his harangue with more and more virtuosity, while the dervish sat before him, his gaze fixed upon him with intense concentration. Within a few minutes the man had almost stopped talking, and the dervish was asleep. In the morning, as the caravan's animals were being saddled up for the march, some of the travellers asked the dervish the meaning of his behaviour. He said, "That man wanted your attention, and you did not want to give it, because you wanted to be doing something else. I wanted rest, but I knew that I would have to pay for it in advance. As soon as our friend had gained his objective, he no longer wanted it. As soon as I gained mine, of relative quiet following concentrated effort, I took advantage of it, and you people benefited too." When asked his own impressions of the night before, the talker said, "That pretended dervish had the insolence to fall asleep as I spoke, after pretending to be interested. He was only trying to impress us all. Let that be a lesson to you." The outward and the inward. A Sufi of Bokhara attracted large concourses of people, and his house was always full of disciples and pilgrims. Distressed by this activity and movement, one devout student left the city almost as soon as he had entered it in search of the sage, and made his way to the hut of a more solitary contemplative in eastern Turkestan. When the two had sat in silent contemplation for a time, the mystic raised his head, having read his visitor's mind, and said, "When you judge by externals, by appearances only, you will gain only superficialities. You disliked the outward aspect of the sage of Bokhara, and therefore could not reach his inner aspect. On the final day, if you are to be judged in similar fashion on your outward form, why not prepare your own outwardness? You are soberly dressed. Bedeck yourself with beads. Your robe is plain. Make it an object of remark. Decorate and display yourself. Then you might at least be credited with being consistent." A request. If you enjoyed this book, please review it on Amazon and Goodreads. Reviews are an author's best friend. To stay in touch with news on forthcoming editions of Idries Shah works, please sign up for the mailing list at bit.ly/ISF list. And to follow him on social media, please go to any of the following links: twitter.com/Idries Shah, facebook.com/Idries Shah, youtube.com/Idries Shah 999, pinterest.com/Idries Shah, bit.ly/isgoodreads, idriesshah.tumblr.com, and the main website at idriesshahfoundation.org. Thanks for listening. That was The Magic Monastery by Idries Shah. First published 1972, published in this edition 2017. This work is copyright the estate of Idries Shah, all rights reserved, copyright throughout the world. This audiobook was narrated by David Alt and is made available by the Idries Shah Foundation.